The Crow and the Daylight. Many, many years ago, when the world began, there was no daylight in the land of the far north. The Inuit lived in the dark, with only faint glimmers of light from their seal-oiled lamps to see by. They did not know when they should get up, nor when they should go to bed, because there is no day and no night. A very wise crow lived in one of these villages. He had learned to talk and was very much respected by all the people. Sometimes the crow would tell stories of the wonders he had seen on his journey to other lands, and that is how the Inuits first heard about daylight. "What is daylight?" they asked. "Where there is daylight, people can see all around," the crow replied. "They can see the whole countryside. They could even see animals a long way off." The Inuits thought that daylight sounded like a very good thing. "How much easier hunting would be," they said. "How much safer we would be if we could see the polar bears before they attacked. If only we had daylight here in our land." They gathered around the crow and begged him to fetch some daylight for them. At first, the crow refused. "It is a long flight to the land of daylight," he said, "and even if I arrive safely, they might not give me any." The Inuits begged and pleaded, and at last the crow agreed to go. After a rest and a meal, he flew up towards the black sky and turned towards the east, where daylight comes from. After traveling for many days, the crow saw a dim light above the horizon. He flew on still until the sky was all lit up and he could see the ground beneath him. Light shone from a large snow house belonging to a village chief. By now, the crow was exhausted, so he settled on a tree to rest. Just then, a young woman left the large snow house and walked to the river to fetch water. As the crow watched, she dipped a seal skin bucket through a hole in the ice to hold up some water. The crow slipped from the sprinch. He shook off the skin and turned himself into a tiny speck of dust, dancing on the beam of light. As the chief's daughter walked back with her bucket of water, the speck of dust settled on her dress and was carried into the house. Inside, the warm and filled was light. The chief sat watching his beloved grandson crawling around on a bearskin rug. The baby played with toys, animal, and kayaks carved with ivory, putting them all into an ivory box, and laughed with delight as he tripped them out again. When the young woman put down the bucket of water to pick her son up, the speck of dust drifted from her dress into the baby's ear. The baby began to cry. The chief, who loved the child dearly, frowned and asked what's wrong. He asked to give some daylight to play with, whispered the speck of dust in the baby's ear. The baby asked for daylight. The chief smiled and told his daughter to untie the raw hide string that secured with leather hunting bags. Inside was a wooden box with a picture of all the brave things that the chief has done, carving on the side. The baby smiled at the picture as the mother showed them to him. But then he started to cry and ask for daylight. The chief could refuse his beloved grandson nothing. So he had told his daughter to open the box and give him the baby one of the shining ball that he kept inside. Once more he spoke. The speck of dust whispered in the baby's ear, "Ask for some string to tie around the ball," it said. The baby asked for string. Now he played happily, dangling the bright ball on a string. The chief and his daughter stepped outside, leaving the door open so that the baby could call to them if it wished. This was the opportunity that the crow had been hoping for. "Play near the doorway," the crow whispered into the baby's ear. The baby played near the door. "Go and play outside. Take the daylight with you and swing it in the breeze." As the baby crawled outside, the speck of dust jumped from his ear to the crow's skin. As the crow snatched the string from the baby's hand and took the ball of light high into the sky. The baby screamed so loud that the chief and his daughter came running to see what was wrong. Hunters tried to bring the crow down with their arrows, but he was already beyond the reach. The crow traveled westward. Light from the swinging ball illustrated the ground below. When he reached the land of the Inuits, he broke a tiny piece of daylight. He had flowed over the village, reaching home at last. The crow dropped the ball soon that shattered into 100 pieces and sent light shining into every house. The people were delighted and crowded around to thank him. If I had brought back the big daylight, there would never had been darkness here again, the crow explained it. There would have been daylight and night, winter and summer, but the big daylight is too heavy for me to carry. I only bring a small ball. That is why it is said that the land of the far north, it is dark for half of the year, and for the other half is light. And why the Inuits have always been friends with the crow and never tried to kill him. Now, thank you for listening to this story. If you like to hear more of these stories, hit like and comment down below.